Hello everyone, I'm Marieanne, the Artsie Crafter. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to start making my travel journal, or both the travel journals, and I showed you in the last video some ideas of how to make a travel journal and what to put in your travel journal. So today this is one of my old ones, and I made this one by making the pages online, or not online I should say, on my computer and printing them out. So this one, my new one for this trip, will be totally different to this. So put that aside, and I was gathering together some ideas for making. I'm going to start by making the journal covers, and my inspiration I got from, I just found these maps of the places we're going to be traveling online, and I wanted them to be have a bit of a vintage look about them. And I sort of like these two in a way, but I wanted mine to be fairly neutral. So I don't have a firm idea in my head, but I thought I didn't want color, but I kind of like the way this looks. So I might kind of combine, I might kind of combine these two ideas together. I like the grungy look on the outside of this one. This is actually Iceland, is one of the places we're going to. So I will be playing around with those. And so I want, and this is another one. This is just a piece of paper that I had. And I had some, I used some string to make some marks on there, line marks on there. So that was another idea. So I will, this one here is one I really gravitate towards, because I know I can paint that background in there and then perhaps draw some images of maps. I won't be doing exact maps of any particular country. I want to have a combination, so I make up like a fantasy map of the world. And then I could add little elements onto it. I don't know at this stage. As I said, I want to keep it fairly neutral looking. So anyway, that's my inspiration for making the cover. So I'll put that aside for now. Anyway, so I've made two panels. I've cut these panels out to a little bit bigger than my journal size. And my journal, I think it's 9 inches high by 6 inches wide. So this is about 11 high by, I've just, whatever the panel was, I cut it out, because this is double over. And we're going, my husband and I are going in for 7 weeks. So I know that other one there, I had to make 2 journals for 6 weeks. So I definitely have to make 2 journals for a 7-week trip. And I'm going to paint both of these, and then, you know, I could do something different on each one, and I'll have one, it will be the part 1 of the trip, and the other will be part 2. So for now, it's the challenge of painting these background, and so I will get some paints out and I'll put some plastic down and we'll see what happens. These are the paints that I'm using. They're just a mixture of brands, and I'm using some yellows and a variation of browns, different browns, and I'm running out of some of these paints, so I added some besides the yellow ochre, raw sienna. I'm using some cab yellow medium, Van Dyke brown, burnt umber, some sepia, and some burnt sienna. So I've just added them to this palette here and added some water in there. I didn't want to add too much water, but because this is fabric, I had to add a little bit more to get it to spread out. And I'm just using, this is the biggest, cleanest paintbrush I've got at the moment, so a bigger one would have been better. But anyway, I'll see how we go with that. So I'll put those aside. And this is just some cotton fabric that I bought by the meter or the yard, and so I also put 2 layers because I'm making 2 journal covers. I put one layer on top of the other, so the second layer can soak up some of the colour that seeps through the front panel, so it might cut down on having to use too much paint or a lot of paint. So the first thing I have to do is I could take this over and run under the tap and get it wet, damp, but I don't want to over wet it. So we'll see how this works. If it doesn't work, I'll have to keep spraying it with water until it's very wet. Don't think I've ever done this before. So it's going to be an experiment. I have painted on fabric, but I was using acrylic paints, and I don't want to use acrylic paints because, oh, I must have had some paint on my hand. Don't want to use acrylic paints because it tends to make the fabric stiff, and I don't want the fabric stiff. I want it fairly pliable. I guess if I start light, I can always darken it up and change the colors, and I want to keep adding water, so I want it wet, to stay wet. And this is a case where you hope that it will the colors will lighten as it dries. So I'll start with this. It's fairly dark, but add some more water, spread that color out. It's quite pretty, and it's a bit too clean for my liking, so I'll have to grunge it up a little bit somehow. Just keep spreading that color out further. I've got a lot of area to cover, and I don't want it drying on me around the edges, so I've got to keep wetting it so it doesn't. And somewhere along here I will start adding other colors. Okay, so I haven't added any of this color, which is raw sienna. Might do that over the rest, and then I hope you're in shot. So might add this color to the rest, and then I can just keep applying other colors, darker colors over the top, just so I can get some coverage there. And I want to make sure I get all the edges covered. Well, actually, doesn't really matter because I made this panel bigger than my journal covers, so I don't have to worry about the edges really. Make sure it all gets nice and blended. So it'll be interesting to see what the one underneath will look like when I take this top bit off. Oops. That makes a nice mark. You turn this over and it adds some variation. See this color I've got in the corner here, it's a bit thick, so it's one way to get a variegated effect, which I quite like. Okay, that's quite nice. And so I'll start darkening around the edges. And I'm not quite sure which color brown that I like the best, but I'm going to try them all.
start with a lighter brown and then work my way up to the darker brown and see what happens. And I don't want it so pretty looking in the middle. And on my screen, when I look through the camera, it looks very yellow, but in mine it looks more like a pumpkin color. So that's quite interesting, and this stands out a lot more on my camera than it does in real life, so that's a bit interesting. And I wonder what happens if I add some of this in, just to tone down some of that bright yellow. So I don't want to add too much colour in these areas, because I want to be able to have some ocean and some landmass, make them different. But it's just giving me an idea. And add some of this sepia. It's one of my new favourite colours, sepia. Gives that vintage look. Okay, so far I like it, and then I'll add the darker brown again. So far it's working out the way that I hoped, so that's a good sign. Wash my brush out, dry it off a bit, and then I can blend these in a little bit more. While there's no colour on my brush and not as much water. I've got some of these blotches, but you don't want to play around with it too much. As I said, when I draw my land masses, I can go back and darken those areas. So I do want the edges, I want the edges darker, so that's important. And so in here will be the landmass and the water. And I think that's all I'm going to do for this stage. And I just want to peel this back, put my brush down, peel this back to see what, if anything, transferred to the back. And you can see nothing much. A little bit, but not much. So I'm going to take this off, and I'll do the back panel exactly the same. I'll dry it off, and I'll come back and I'll show you how it looks when it's dried. These panels are now dry with that sealant on there, and so I can go ahead and draw my continents out with the pen and then paint them in. And the next decision will be whether I'm going to place this on a hard cover or a soft cover. The soft cover I would make out of this paper bag. So, and then the hard cover, I've got two cereal boxes here. I could use those, and they're about the right size. So I measured them, so I do have them, and they've got a 2 1/4 inch spine. So I'm hoping the spine will be big enough. I'll know when I put my signatures in there to see whether they will be big enough or fit inside these covers. So that's my next decision. So this is, I'm leaning towards using the cereal boxes rather than the paper bag, because I've done a few now with the paper bags. And so I might use these instead. Just have to trim the tops and edges down, and I'll just have a look to see what this looks like. And I did cut this panel out, because I cut it out bigger because I thought perhaps when I painted it, it might shrink when it dried, but it didn't seem to do that. So that's okay. So now I'm going to have to cut it down to size, and so that's what that one will look like. And then when I finish that, I might put another panel on the spine here, in a contrasting color or something darker. I could also hand stitch it on here or just glue it on. So that's another decision I'll have to make. But for now, I'll put all that aside and go off and draw these my little continents out. Little countries out, and as I said, I got that one there. I'm just going to draw around those blotches, and that will be that. And same as this one here, I'm going to have to do that one from scratch. So I'll go off and do that, and I'll come back and I'll show you how I went with it. Hopefully it'll work out the way I am expecting it to, but we'll see. So this is how they turned out, and I'm quite pleased with them. I did the outline in, I should have got them out in some black ink pen, and I think I used this one. No, I didn't use that one. I don't know which one I used. I should have got these out before. I think I used this one. This one I think is the Artline medium pen, and it wasn't permanent, so I had to go back and get what did I get? This one here, I think I got the uni pen. Yes, that one. So I started off with this pen, and then when I tried to color, I did the outline first, and then I colored it in with some paint. And when I did that, you can see in places where the ink ran a little bit, so I just had to touch that up. So then when I finished painting, I did go back with the permanent water and fade proof permanent ink pen, which is a uni pen. So that's what happened there. And then after I did all that, I went back and I used some gold acrylic paint to put some splatters onto the covers. So this is the first one I did, where I had to draw the continents out and all the little islands from just my imagination I used. So that's how it turns out. And this is sort of like a faint image of the UK and Ireland, but it's very vague as the way I wanted it to be. And this is the one that was pretty much done for me. All I had to do is trace around the colors on the page. So the light color is the ocean and the rest are the continents. It's pretty much one big landmass in this one. And again, I went around, this time I think I used just the permanent pen, ink pen, so the lines aren't as dark as the other one, as you can see. And of course I ended with splattering some acrylic paint onto the top. So now, and of course these are much larger, I am going to be using these boxes. I think the spine, 2.5 inch spine, will be wide enough, and so I need to cut these panels down because they're far too big. So when you wrap them around like this and around here, I'm going to, you can see the inside, there's quite a bit at the bottom. So if I cut that off, and I'm going to wrap these side panels, I'll just move that aside so you can see properly. I'm going to wrap these side panels around, and I'm going to attach them. I'll attach a bit of glue on this outer edge so that they are they stay down properly, and I'm just going to glue the top and the bottom, and I'm going to make them side pockets. But before I do that, I'm going to cover the inside of the cover first, and then that will be the last bit I do after I cut this off. And I don't mind, I want this to have ragged edges, so that will be the covers all done. So the next video I will be finishing the covers, putting perhaps some title on the front, or some embellishment, but I haven't decided as yet what I want to do there. So that will be the next challenge I face. So for now, that's all I have for you today. And I want to thank everyone for watching, and
wish everyone a happy crafty day, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone.